Good evening, and welcome to the happenings in Medfield. As you may be aware, that you have seen a number of shows with selectmen. I have the opportunity of sitting with the chairman, Selectman Peterson, and the editor of the Medfield Press, Bowen. We do this on an area so that the viewers in Medfield can get an idea, not just from a selectman meeting, but also comments of the selectmen. And so, without further ado, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce to you the chairman of the Selectmen Committee, Pete Peterson.
Hi, Jack. Thank you very much.
Editor of the Medfield Press, Max Bowen.
Hi, Jack. Good to be back.
And it's awfully nice to have you, gentlemen. And so we're going to get started with the chairman. Number one, goals and implementing, as I have here on my list, systems to get resident town government information improved in the town website.
Well, every year, the selectmen in the past several years have been coming up with a set of goals. I think this is a good exercise for selectmen to go through as a board, and it helps, I think, the people in town know what our thinking is if we put it down on writing. So what we've been doing for the past several years is putting down our goals in a written format, and then coming to a consensus set of goals for the Board of Selectmen for the upcoming year. What I brought along today were my goals that I had written about a month and a half ago, and I updated them a couple weeks ago because I added one that I thought was pretty important when it occurred to me. And so I thought that we could use that as maybe a talking point for things today. And I broke it down into four basic categories. The first is communication, the second is the Medfield State Hospital, the third is planning, and the fourth is the town finances. And you were just reading from the first set of headings of communication. And under that, what I did was I had two goals that I thought were important. One is to improve the town website. I always have trouble finding the agendas, and it just doesn't seem as fast and as easy as it could be on the town website. And so I think that would be nice if we could upgrade that. And then the second goal is something that I don't think that we're doing at the moment, and it's to create a system where information that's in the town hall gets pushed out to the residents, and so that if you wanted to sign up for a newsletter or something, or a list of changes to the town website, that you'd get an email that would then notify you about the change in the website, or the meeting, or the minutes, or things of that sort. Or if somebody had written a report, you could get a copy of it. One of the things that I did this morning was I was posting to my blog, and I noticed that there was an aberrant sort of jump in the number of visitors to my blog, and I thought, I thought that was kind of interesting, so I thought I would explore it. And it turned out that last week the Patch had picked up a blog posting that I had put up about the street repairs that were planned in town for the summer. And there were so many people that were clearly interested in what was happening to their street and when it was going to happen, that there was this huge click-through from the Patch article, which didn't list the actual streets that were going to be done, so you had to come to my blog to see the actual streets. But that's just an example of people really having a thirst for that information that's sitting there in a file in the town hall. I had asked Ken Feeney to give us a list, and he brought the list to the selectmen's meeting. I just scanned it and I put it on my blog, and so now people have access to that list of, and it was a dozen streets that are going to be chip sealed this summer, and then the list of the main streets and when they were going to be redone with the more major work over the next 2 or 3 years, I think Ken said. But so that there's that huge demand, I think, for that type of information. So if we can somehow create a system to push that information to people, I don't think, in this day and age, we can't expect that people are going to come out to meetings in the evening to get their information. That's not how people live their lives in the information age. And so that we need to, when we have the information, we just need a very simple technological means to get that out to
Very
the
good,
people.
Pete, yeah.
And that was part of the reason that I started my blog too, so that if people want to subscribe to that, they can get the things that I pick and choose. But you know, there are things beyond what I pick and choose that people are going to be interested in, and so that it'd be
Well,
good to have a.
I'm aware that a lot of people, in my meanderings, and I talked to Max about this, as I sit in the morning with coffee, people will come up to me and they're very, very interested. They're very interested in what the selectmen are doing. They're very interested right now in what Senator Timothy and Representative Hawkins are doing. So we need information from you as the chairman.
Mhm.
State Hospital.
The state hospital is in the process of the legislation wending its way through the State House, which I've come to think of as the puzzle palace, because of the difficulty of understanding how the processes work and what happens. Last week, and this is the legislation that is required for the town to go forward with the purchase. We need special legislation from the state to allow us to go ahead and buy for the $3.1 million that we've agreed to pay DCAM for the property. A couple months ago, I went to a hearing. Every bill is required to have a hearing. The hearing was very pro forma before, I don't even remember what committee it was. It was a committee that I'd never heard of before. And there were really no questions. The one question that really got asked was what's going to happen to the money? And at that point, the money was going to a trust fund that was going to be used for any purpose that I think it's the Executive Office of Human Services wanted it to. That actually got amended probably by the senator that asked the question about where the money was going, and it now is going to go to DMH. That's the stuff that we don't care about. However, last week the legislation got amended by having the emergency preamble taken out of it, and the emergency preamble is the means by which the legislation becomes effective as soon as the governor signs it. Without that emergency preamble, you have to wait a 90-day period before the legislation became effective, and so that we'd have to wait 3 months before the purchase could move forward, and there seems to be no real reason to wait for that, and so that we raised the question with Representative Denise Garlick as to why that had happened, and she got back to us and said that it had been reinserted, but as I say, she didn't explain why it had been taken out, and she just said that she got it back in. So that's happened. The legislation is moving forward on the purchase. The legislation on the water tower
I was going to ask you about
has
the
already
water
been
tower.
signed by the governor, and that was emergency legislation as well, so that's effective. The site needs to be actually surveyed as to the parcel that is going to go to the town, and that's where we are at this point. Getting that survey of on the ground as to
that's
which
what-
parcel is going to come to the town.
Max and I were talking about that earlier before camera, exactly. It's hypothetical, Pete. We'll say hypothetically, it's signed and it's ready. Now what happens?
With the water tower or the state
No,
hospital? Oh, the whole state hospital purchase?
Yeah.
Well, then we don't have a purchase and sale agreement with the state, and so that needs to happen. And the state was not willing to talk about the terms of that purchase and sale agreement up until now. They apparently are willing to consider that and go forward with that process now of working out the terms of that. There's a 5-member committee that was appointed to negotiate with the state. I'm one of the 5 members of that committee. The other are Steve Nolan, Ken Richards, Bill Massaro, and John Harney. And I'm assuming that committee will be tasked by the town with the process of creating the purchase and sale agreement for the site. And so that's how we get then to the legal part of going forward with the purchase. The other and maybe bigger task for the town is to figure out what to do with the property. And that is in the state that the selectmen at our meeting last week just appointed the committee that we're tasking with the purpose of going forward to do the planning and the thinking about what should happen at the state hospital. And they haven't even had their first meeting yet, I don't think, so that's a process that is just about, it's on the launching pad ready to take off. The goal is to have that happen over the next year, and by June of next year, a year from now, have perhaps a special town meeting to enact the plan and then go forward with the redevelopment of the state hospital.
Earlier, the water tower. I know it's been signed. Now, where do we go from there?
Well, at town meeting, we appropriated the money to build it, and so that the next step would be actually, I would think, as soon as they get that survey done, then they can actually deed us the property. Once we have the property in hand and legally own it, then we can do the contracts to go ahead. I think the Water and Sewer Board, as I understand it, has actually gone and gotten the contracts set up for the process of doing the final planning and the construction of the water tower. And the other part of it is they're going to run a new water main up from well 6, which is the one down by the river off of Route 27, and they're going to run a direct water main from that well right up to the new water tower. Currently, that water goes all the way down to West Mill Street, circles around the block the long way, and then comes back up to the hospital water tower. And so that I think that the thinking is that it's good to have the redundancy in the system, to have the water have the ability to go 2 different directions, but also it'll probably be cheaper to pump it from well 6 up to the water tower directly.
As I'd been asked, and I'll ask you, going through the episodes and clarifications and building of the water tower, what is your estimate upon completion? Any idea? A year? Half a year? People have asked, when are they going to get their new water tower?
Yeah, and I'm hesitating because that was related at our selectmen's meeting, and I don't remember exactly what the answer was, but it's within a year or less is my recollection of. It's going to be a different looking water tower. It's going to have a large main tube, and then it'll have like an onion bulb on top.
I see. Now let's go on to your goals. Your planning is.
Under planning, I have number 1 is just develop a town-wide master plan. We don't really have a town-wide master plan, so that my attitude, I guess, is that we shouldn't be just planning things ad hoc, that we should sit down and think about across the whole gamut of the whole town, all the town land that we own, what we want to do with different things in different places, and then as things come up, then we can respond to them as to how we want an individual use or an individual thing to happen in a particular place, so that we have a framework within which to make evaluations and judgments about things. One of the things that I'd like to see is the affordable housing plan, so that it can be in different parts throughout the town. I like that idea because then we don't. Well, first of all, to back up, we want the affordable housing because it's probably the right thing to do in terms of having a range of housing choices for people. It also inures to the town's benefit to have 10% affordable housing, because then developers cannot come in and just site a 40B project anywhere, which is what happened to us down on West Street. Developers often use the threat of a 40B project as a club to extract greater densities in developments, because of the fact that most towns don't want a 40B project because of the incredible density of them. Needham is facing one now where someone has proposed 300 units on 6 acres, right next to 128. And So I think it behooves us to have a master plan, and then, as I said, we can have the, pick out which land goes for affordable housing and which land goes for future schools if that's needed, and that sort of thing. Let's see, my next one was arrange for a consultant. Oh, this was the one that I added. This is why I updated my, my town goals. Arrange for a consultant to do a town government-wide review and analysis of the current functioning and to make suggestions for changes. I want to make sure that all the town departments are functioning in the way that is optimal. And I think that it just makes sense every once in a while to look at how you're doing things and whether you can do things in a different way, if there are better ways of doing them. One of the things that we've heard about in going to these meetings with the Massachusetts Municipal Association is the benefits of having a pavement plan. I think they call it a pavement plan, where you inventory your streets and you come up with a list of how you're going to repair things and when they're going to need repairs, and the goal is to spend less money on repairing streets ultimately, to do the sorts of repairs that allow you to get greater longevity out of your infrastructure. So I think that it behooves us to think as to whether or not we want to have that sort of planning going on in town, whether we want, let's see, I've started to think that we should have on the town side, that we should have a business office, sort of equivalent to what the schools have for a business office, where they have someone who is actually charged with running the finances of the school department. I think the town would be, it would be good to have the equivalent of a chief financial officer running a business office for the town. And that person would then oversee the spending by the departments and make sure that everything that the budgets and the spending is done in the proper way, basically. The selectmen have asked the department heads and the committees to generate 5-year plans. Doesn't have to be anything very detailed, but I think it's good to have everybody thinking ahead prospectively and to have to go through the exercise of actually writing it down. That's the sort of thing that I would think should be an evergreen plan, which means that you write it once, but then you update it every year so that it's always a fresh plan every year. The next item on my list was to have an affordable housing plan, and that's there's a formal process by which the town can adopt a affordable housing production plan, I think it's called, by which you lay out how you're going to get to that 10% affordable housing. And if you adopt one of those plans and you actually make progress every year on getting towards that goal, then people cannot come in and build the 40B project while you're making sufficient progress every year. So that would immunize us against another 40B coming in the way the one did on West Street. So I think that's important. We have a draft of that plan that I saw a year or more ago, actually, and it just hasn't been finalized. Finalizing the plan is the easy part. The hard part is that once you adopt it, then you have to start actually figuring out how to get those affordable units built every year.
Within the affordable housing,
Mm-hmm.
I've got a couple of questions. I get them from seniors.
Yeah.
The unfortunate part that some senior living, they're a limited income.
Mm-hmm.
Tilden is full. And consequently, one woman I was talking to, she doesn't want to sell her home, but she's going to have to. And she's lived in Medfield for 30 years. And she said, I sell the house, then where do I go? Because being on a limited income her prescription costs or something else again. And she said, you put an application in for even Tilden, and it's a waiting period. So she said, the only way and the only place I can go to now is Norfolk. Pete, has there been any planning, any thoughts relative to senior housing?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think there's a real recognition that we are lacking in senior housing in town, and we're lacking in different options for seniors. In terms of the senior housing, there's a site right next to Tilden Village that could be built upon and could accommodate more senior housing similar to Tilden. And I think that that's a goal that we really should be working on.
I agree.
That can be part of our affordable housing. That is something that I think that land is technically under the control of the state, as I understand it, so that we'd have to work with the state on that. But I think that is absolutely a goal that we should be working on. I know that the last director of Tilden was or the last director of he's the director of the Medfield Housing Authority, I guess. Jack Hurd was interested in going forward with that, and he had told the selectmen that he was going to look into different ways for that to happen and get back to us. But unfortunately, he moved on, and we haven't heard back on the selectmen's level yet from anybody about that. I think the financing of it is probably the issue. That would be the thing that we'd have to figure out how it could be financed, who would pay, basically. So that there's that aspect in terms of senior housing. And then I try to draw a distinction in terms of housing for seniors, because to me that's something different, which is that we don't have enough variety of housing in town that is of interest to seniors, which is why we've lost a huge number of our residents to the complex in Norfolk that you were referencing, Pin Oaks and River's Edge, that they call them Little Medfield over there apparently. I think that it would make a lot of sense, and I hope that the planning process for the state hospital includes the type of housing that would be attractive to those sorts of seniors, whether it be condominiums in larger buildings or townhouses, or housing like Ralph Costello has built at Old Village Square. That's exceedingly expensive housing, but that is mainly empty nesters down there, seniors, but well-heeled seniors. But I think that what we want to do is we want to try to have more of a range, and the part of the range that we're missing for the senior housing is maybe the condominiums, the townhouses, and I'm hoping that those will get included in the planning for the state hospital, and as part of that master planning for the whole town, where we could make use of those different town-owned parcels that we have around town. We have the Hinckley property, which is near my house, the Lot 3 property, which is right near my house. There are other town-owned lands behind the Wheelock School. I think that we need to be looking at all of those parcels in this master planning process to figure out which thing the town wants and which thing it wants on which parcel.
You know, you see the seniors, I do, even at Shaw's when they're shopping. They want to stay in Medfield, but the unfortunate circumstances prevailing, they can't. I am sure, Max, you've probably heard comments also at the press, and your heart goes out to them. Now, Pete, you mentioned property. You know, at Tilden, there's a piece of property, quite a piece, right next to Tilden. I don't know as to whether or not that's state-owned, or I think you know, Max, the one I'm talking about. As you go down Pound Street, Pete. Yep. And I'm wondering, can you build on that piece?
Oh, I would hope that we can implement a plan to build on that piece. Yes,
because that would be nice for because your heart goes out to them. I mean, and
absolutely.
This is the past generation, but if the past generation wasn't with it, we wouldn't be here. So
the other, if you go down to number 14 on my list, Jack, I've got something that is another thing that I think that we should be doing to help the seniors stay in their current housing, and that's to implement property tax relief for the seniors.
I agree with you.
Sudbury, and the problem is that the Massachusetts state constitution says that that everybody has to pay equal taxes, and so that we have to be able to work around the constitutional impediment. Sudbury recently got special legislation through the legislature that enables them to provide some property tax relief to the seniors. I think that we need to see how that's worked in Sudbury and look at implementing something similar in Medfield for the seniors. It's the right thing to do for seniors who've been paying taxes to the town for years, for decades. And secondly, it inures to the town's benefit to keep those seniors in town. And so that I think that we should give them a financial incentive to stay in town by giving them a little bit of a break on their property taxes.
I really
What's going
agree.
to happen if they move is that we will get a new family moving in, which in all likelihood will have young children, and then we'll be paying the school costs for that.
Well, this lady, she's in her 80s. She said, well, her daughter and she looked around, you know, but the houses are $500,000. Well, she said, I can't afford anything like that, you know, and they're on limited income, and your heart goes out to them.
Absolutely.
And consequently, I think, what you had said in taxes and incentive, Pete, is very, very important to them. And I know that Max feels the same way, but
Absolutely.
so whatever can be done, I guess.
And there are some things that can be done. I know the legislature is trying to create a menu of sort of a cafeteria plan of things that you could adopt to assist the seniors. They haven't affected that yet, but I heard one of the legislators from Lexington talk about that. I think it was Kaufman was his name. And if they would set up that sort of enabling legislation so that a town like Medfield could then just pick the ones that we want and enact them at town meeting if people chose to think it was a good idea, that would be perfect. At the moment, it's a little problematic to create the system to give them the property tax relief because of the fact that there's this constitutional requirement that everybody pay equal taxes.
I understand in finances, you've got two other areas. Another plate full to give the chairman. The new fire department and the police department. That's going to cost money. How's that coming along?
Well, that's that's pretty far along in the planning process now. We have a very effective committee working on the public buildings. They started out by looking at that area along Dale Street with the fire department, the police department, the FAF Center, and the Dale Street School, and I think they even included the Memorial School, and they saw that as a campus, a municipal campus of all those buildings, and they tried to plan for all of them. But clearly the next building that we need to build is the new public safety building, and that's going to happen. It's going to.
Well, I understand that. I understand that the big building that the fire department is going to be moving to the town garage, and the police department is going to move out on Old Ice House Road until those are completed. That's what I understand.
Yeah, they're going to need, both of them are going to need temporary quarters while the construction is happening. I think that they looked at the possibility of building the new building around the old one, and it was just too expensive. It just adds too much to the cost. It's cheaper to have them vacate and come back.
Well, shall we go on? You've got a list there.
Back under planning, let's see. We talked about the affordable housing plan. We're still waiting to get some bylaws to see what bylaws we might need for any future development at the state hospital. That's something the selectmen have asked to have happen, and it just hasn't happened. Number 9 on my list was to adopt the Green Communities Act. That got turned down at the annual town meeting this year, but I think that it's one of those things that we should look at again, and I think that I think it's the right thing to do for the benefit of the planet, basically, to reduce our carbon footprint in town, and to reduce the amount of global warming, but it also saves us money. I mean, and the first thing we get with the Green Communities Act is a $148,000 grant from the state We get eligibility for other smaller grants.
I actually had a question for you about this. Now,
Mhm.
The Green Community Act. This also includes adopting the stretch code.
It does.
And when this came before town meeting, it seemed like almost a little unnecessary because very soon they were going to be changing the building code statewide.
Yeah, next month.
To really reflect that, and it
Yep.
seemed like. And I was sitting there listening to the presentation, thinking, but wait, if we're changing this in a few months, why are we doing this now? It just seemed kind of like, if we did this a year ago, then that would be a little more significant. Now it seems like, okay, well, let's just wait a few months, and then we'll all have it.
Yes. The stretch code is a forward-looking code
Mhm.
that attempts to require buildings that are going to use less energy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always going to be forward-looking. The current stretch code is going to become mandated for everyone, as you
Sure.
say, I think it's in July. After that, we'll develop a new stretch code, and if we adopt the Green Communities Act, then we will again be the new adopter of the stretch code.
Okay.
So that the current stretch code becomes the building code,
Mhm.
and then there will later be a new stretch code. And so that when you
Okay.
adopt the Green Communities Act, you're basically a year or two ahead on your building code.
Sure.
Ahead of everybody else. So that what you're doing is you're being an early adopter
Mm-hmm.
of what everybody else is going to have to adopt later anyway.
Okay. I see.
That's the way that the system has played out so far, and that we expect it'll happen in the future.
Mhm.
But all of the things that go along with the Green Communities Act, to my mind, make sense. Building buildings that are going to be more energy efficient. The payback periods are very fast. I mean, I think the figures that I remember were around 5 years for people to make back the additional cost of the buildings.
Mhm.
Buying vehicles that are energy efficient.
Mhm.
Well, that seems like a no-brainer too.
Mhm.
There was an as-of-right zoning, and we dealt with that by adopting the photovoltaic zone, which is in the industrial extensive zone. So we already have done that piece of it.
Mhm.
And I think there was an expedited permitting, fifth one.
I think you're right.
And I think we've pretty much done that as well. And I think all we needed on that one was a letter from the town council.
Okay.
So I think the only real controversial one of the five, I think, was the stretch code.
Yeah.
And my analysis of it is that you're just becoming an early adopter
Sure,
of something
sure.
that is going to be good for our residents in any event.
I do have to wonder, though, what's going to happen if this does come before town meeting again. Are people going to say, well, we already have a very environmentally conscious building code? And it seemed like one of the big arguments against adopting it was that it puts a little too much pressure on new construction, new homes too, because now they have all these other things that they are now required to do. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that was the big concern, that I heard the word paternalistic at town
Yep.
meeting. I
Mhm.
thought, well, gee, we have all kinds of statutes and requirements about health issues, about building issues, and that's just what we've chosen as a society that we are going to do, that we're going to have a series of rules and regulations that we want our people to live by, because we think that it makes for a better community, a better society, a better interaction with one another. And so that I don't see a stretch code as being paternalistic. I see it is a tighter set of regulations around energy conservation.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know that it is going to cost slightly more to build after this is adopted.
Mm-hmm.
But the downside of that is that you get that money back in a matter of very few years, and then going forward, you're saving money. I go back to the fact that I think that we, as a people, we have an obligation to try to leave the planet in as good a shape as we found it.
Of course.
And we've got some problems at the moment with the global warming, and so that I think that it behooves us to try to do whatever we can to reduce our carbon footprint as we go forward. And this is what what the stretch code will basically do. It'll require less energy use. Carbon footprint, in my mind, gets down to basically energy uses.
I think that the other issue which was really raised at town meeting was that towns which have a stretch code and towns which don't, if we adopt this and let's say a new business wants to come to Medfield and they say, well, now I have to do this, and this. They may say, you know what, that's going to raise my cost too much. Forget about it. I'm going to go down. I'm going to go to the neighboring town where they don't have a stretch code, and it's a little cheaper for me to open my store.
Right. I guess I would go back to the fact that yes, the building is going to be slightly more expensive in Medfield. I don't think anybody is actually going to make the decision about whether to locate their business in Medfield based on the additional costs that the stretch code would require for their construction, their build out of their store or their business in town. And even if it did, I would hope that the building or the business owner would recognize that a 5-year payback on that additional cost is an incredible return on their money. If they're making 20% back on their monies that they're investing, I understand that when you're starting up, maybe cash flow is a problem, and you want everything to be going into the business, but it's a trade-off, and I think it's a good trade-off for the town, and a good trade-off for the town to ask its residents to make. I don't think we're going to lose much in the way of business. I think that the reason that people are going to locate a retail establishment here is because they see a market, and that they want to service that market. They think that there's enough business that they're going to make money doing it, and I don't think the extra cost of and it's a fairly small cost.
Sure.
I don't think that's going to be the Achilles heel or the thing that's going to make the difference between they're doing it or not doing it. So.
Good.
Well, gentlemen, I see that old clock on the wall kind of indicates to me that we're coming to a close. Usually, at this time, I would like to get comments, what you would like to say. So I'm going to start with you, Max.
Okay.
Anything you'd like to say before we close?
Well, I think I'll just say what I usually say, in that I'm the editor for the Medfield Press, and that I'm always open to any suggestions for stories. If you want to submit any kind of notices, photos, columns, letters, whatever, you can reach me at 781-433-8354. You can also email me at mbowen@wickedlocal.com. And Jack, again, thanks very much for having me back here.
Thank you.
A lot of fun.
And now I'm going to turn to the chairman of the Selectman Committee, Mr. Peterson. What have you got to say? Anything you'd like to add before we close?
Well, I'll just take a cue from Max and say that if anybody wants to ask me any further questions about things that we've talked about here, I'm very happy to talk to people. You can reach me through my cell phone number, which is 9190, or you can email me at osler.peterson@oslerpeterson.com. I've also got a blog about Medfield happenings, about things information that I get as a selectman that I pass along to people, and that's at WordPress, and it's called Medfield 02052, and if you Google that, I'm sure you'll find it.
Well, that's important, because they can get it right from you. Because I'm sure, even at a meeting of this nature, for such a short period of time, many questions arise. And consequently, if they can sit down and write or talk to one of the selectmen about a specific problem, it satisfies them. So, gentlemen, I want to thank you, Max.
Thank you,
Thank you very much. Mr. Peterson, thank you.
And Jack, I should mention too that I have office hours the first Friday of every month at the center from 9 to 10. This coming month it's going to be the 4th of July apparently, so that it'll be the following Friday 9 to 10. But anybody's welcome to just come and ask any questions that they want at that point.
And take note of that to our viewing audience. Once again, gentlemen,
Thank you, Jack.
I want to thank you. This is Jack Peterson wishing you and yours the very best. Good night.
This program was made possible through the generous support of your Medfield friends and neighbors, folks just like you. And thanks for watching.